This week in Aristea 99, we're talking about Gaia. Gaia is the second half of the Master of Puppets expansion that came out last year. She weighs in at 3 initiative, 3 movement, 5 energy, and 3 health. Yes, she is slow and squishy, and slow again. You want to be mindful of that when putting her in your lineup. For her defense, she has a blue and a yellow, which is not exactly great. Again, this just adds to the squishy feeling she has. Her brawn is a green and a yellow, which is actually fairly decent. I was a little surprised at that. And her disengage is a yellow. Not so great. Kind of interesting all around when you look at that. Her character switch is a bang. Displace an obstacle within range 1 to 4 line of sight required. Now, if you've listened to the controllers and minions video we have, you know that minions do count as obstacles. So this is actually rather nice. She can displace her minions, or Fiddler's minions, as well as the barriers you find throughout the Hexadome. So for 3 points is Siren. It's an orange and it's a blue, range 1/1. Now, this means that the target, whoever it is, does need to be adjacent to Gaia. Likewise, she needs to have line of sight, but 1/1, that's pretty much a given. Once you get a success, you place the target in a free space inside a deployment zone, which is not a scoring zone. So this current scoring zone is not a valid place to go. Then place yourself adjacent to the target. Now the nice thing with this, of course, is you put them there first and you go adjacent to them. They have to be in the scoring zone. You don't have to be, you just have to be adjacent. Additionally, with a simple switch of a shield, displace the target after the resolution step of this action. So you can get say you get an ally, you can push them farther towards they want to be, or if it's an enemy, you can push them next to someone you'd rather them fight than Gaia. Gaia would have a hard time getting away, and she's really not a fighter. After that, we've got a 2-point Anafero. Deploy Gorgonian within range 1 to 4 line of sight required. Now, what we're going to want to do here is look at the Gorgonian minion. It is sort of a tapeworm looking thing when you really get down to it. Its defense is not so great, with 2 blacks, but it does have a brawn roll of a green and a black, so it's actually going to be fairly good at keeping a lot of aristos locked into place. The green's got, of course, the critical block. You got a chance for a double block there. And the black, well, that's a block if you get it. It also has a health of 1, so it can go down easily. Now then, it does have ability as well called Nest of Tentacles. During disengage rolls, allies may add 1 black to their brawn roll for each allied Gorgonian adjacent to that enemy. So it works similar to if the enemy had multiple friendlies to get away from. Same idea basically, but they're sort of spelling it out because it's not a Gorgonian, it's not a character, it's a minion, it's an obstacle. So, and as you see here, there's really not a whole lot of rolling going on here. There's no switches for the Gorgonians. They are essentially blockers and ways to deny area. Going through a bunch of them means you're going to have to make a lot of disengage rolls, which are going to be a little bit harder than you would normally have to deal with. Likewise, it's got some defense, not much. So it can go down pretty easily. So it forces your opponents to have to clear these darn things out if they actually want to get through that area. So whether using them for denial or defense, trying to leave a trail of them behind you so that, it's harder to be chased after, you get a fair bit of utility right here with this one minion. Let's go back and look at Anafero again. Again, 2 points, orange and yellow. With a success, you get to deploy a Gorgonian. Notice that it's not automatic. But if there happens to be 2 Banes, you can deploy a Gorgonian within range 1 to 4. So you could potentially get 2 Gorgonians out at one time. That's rather nice. If you wanted to help that along, you would use a focus, perhaps, either from your tactics deck or maybe say if someone like Lakshmi on your team. Finally, we have the 0-point ability, Orme. This is an automatic. Spend 1 movement point to place yourself in a free space inside a deployment zone, which is not a scoring zone. So this is the solo version, basically, of Sidon. And basically gives Gaia, for as slow as she is, very much unparalleled mobility throughout the Hexadome. You want to think of this more as sort of like gross motor control versus fine motor control, though. Because once you get her to the general area she wants to be in, well, she's a little slow to get around otherwise. So you make big jumps, but those last couple of hexes can be a little taxing on her. So on to Gaia's tactics. We have Earth's Fury. During the action step of Gaia's activation, choose a deployment zone which is not a scoring zone. Inflict 1 wound to each enemy target inside the chosen zone. You may displace each enemy target that is inside the chosen zone. This is really quite amusing. I am a big fan of uncontested damage, and additionally the fact that you can displace each enemy target. So whether this is their initial deployment zone or a place they're setting up for, something like that, it's kind of a don't bunch together ability. Now the exception, of course, being if it's a scoring zone. So when you're doing the beginning of assaults, you could not use this on the center zone for the first round. After that is no longer the scoring zone, then it becomes a valid area, but not during that time. So this is actually a really fun ability, and one that you should probably think about, especially if they've managed to get away from characters you'd rather them be next to. You can just place them next to Musashi, or next to Maximus, next to 8-Ball, for instance. Similarly, if you want to get right next to, say, their Wild Bill or their Major Luna, someone like that, someone who doesn't want to be close up, there's your chance. There's a lot of things you could do with that. After that, you have Tectonic Shake. Now, it is worth noting that Tectonic Shake is not allowed in the version 1.8, 1.9 scenarios for certain game modes you may want to try. For instance, if you want to play, say, Capture the Flag, Gaia cannot play Tectonic Shake during the scenario. Same with Human Target. You will want to look at the scenarios and make sure that if you're going to use Gaia, that you can actually use all of her traits, all of her tactics. Conquest would be another one. The reason for this is Tectonic Shake is a very powerful ability. So at the end of the planning phase, choose a deployment zone with no allies inside and a scoring zone. The scoring zone is now a deployment zone, and the deployment zone is now a scoring zone. Remove this tactic from the game. This is literally game-changing. This is huge. Now, again, there has to be no allies inside of the intended deployment zone. You do need to watch that. This card is... This is a huge thing. This takes away a decision that you might not have been able to make. And by virtue of that, this thing is very much a no-worthy card. If someone has Gaia, I could almost say it might be worth picking the standard deck for no, or Tao Wu for no, because of this card. Now the trick with that, of course, being is with any card of this magnitude, is the mere threat of it makes it dangerous, and thus the overreaction to it. So if someone is using, say, TCOM, they might not have Tectonic Shake in there, but they'll probably keep What If on the side with that in mind should they need it. And that's a perfectly valid thing to do. You need to respect the card, but don't be in unreasonable fear of it. Don't let it make you do stupid things. This does force you to adapt. This does force you to deal with a huge change in the game, and right at the beginning. But don't go crazy about it. And one thing to note too is, like, taking Gaia out does not stop her from using the card, because again, it's at the end of the planning phase. It doesn't have to be during her activation. After that, we have Obliteration. During the action step of Gaia's activation, place each obstacle you want to in the Hexadome on a free space which is not inside a deployment zone. Obstacles cannot be placed adjacent to obstacles. Now, we did talk about this in the controllers of minions. The placement of minions is such that they cannot be placed directly adjacent to each other when deployed. This is following similar rules. But the thing with that is, yes, you could actually really choke up one whole area, or you could completely surround one specific enemy or one specific grouping. This gives you a lot of potential and really could mess with the plans your opponent has for the upcoming round or whatever's coming after Gaia, basically. And again, it's place each obstacle you want to, and minions count as obstacles. This is fairly insane, and much like Tectonic Shake, I would just go ahead and say, yeah, this is no-worthy right off the bat. Now, you cannot crowd up and completely deny a deployment zone, but you can really make it hard to get out of. They'll have to, at the very least, waste time attacking to get out. Someone such as Agata or Maximus could get through it, perhaps, but really what you're doing is you're forcing them to spend resources that they don't want to deal with what's going on. Now, if you were to have Gaia and Fiddler together, you could actually use this to set up, yes, obstacles, but also a kill zone where they have to go through the gunjacks as well, or at least where the gunjacks have a chance to go ahead and start firing into a mass of enemies. Finally, we're going to have Epirogenesis. During the action step of Gaia's activation, choose any targets adjacent to you, place yourself inside a deployment zone which is not a scoring zone, place the chosen targets in free spaces adjacent to you. So, this is basically a group teleport. You are limited to who's around you, and you are limited to where you can go, but if you want to either do a mass retreat, or if you want to go ahead and just do, bring the fight to them, this is pretty much your card. And actually, really when it comes down to it, Gaia is so powerful with all of her tactics that, any one of them I could just go ahead and say would be no-worthy. The only one like maybe you could get away with would be Ertz Fury, and even then that's still a significant messing up of your opponent's turn. Everyone takes damage, uncontested, and they get pushed around. But from Tectonic Shake to Obliteration to Epirogenesis, everything there is just massive, 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 massive. The trade-off being is all of them, pretty much except for Tectonic Shake, require Gaia to do it. This is big. Additionally, is her frankly stunning lack of offense. Normally when you get to, when I look at someone who's got little to no offense, I'm thinking someone like Gatha or Hexer or Lakshmi. And then you start looking at states and things like that. Now they all have, what they have in common is, yes, they do all have Contender, but Contender is a very weak form of offense. Gaia is basically about controlling space through her minions. Then her personal abilities and her tactics are very much about manipulating the Hexadome itself and working within that. And it's just, she is amazing. One of the favorite tricks that well, I think pretty much everyone's done it at this point, whether it's Banzai Zap or Keep a Hooligan or Primus, is they love dropping Gaia bombs, where they'll have Gaia drop into a deployment zone, and then all of a sudden, she brings with them, whether it's a utterly feral Moonchild, or brings in Max and locks everyone down, brings in Valkyrie, freezes and immobilizes everyone around her. It's just that alpha strike right there. Now they are putting Gaia at risk, obviously, but at the same time, the reward for that risk is considerable. That's Gaia. So next week we are actually going to be going over, I do believe, Reckless Hearts. So that's Hippolyta and Axel Steel. I'm looking forward to covering them. We had they've been fun. So like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.